Welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Garcia-Cichosz, and we are joined today by Alvin Franklin, Executive Senior Associate AD and Chief Revenue Officer at Houston. Alvin, thanks so much for being here.
Steph, thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
Well, it's a beautiful day in Houston. It's a beautiful day where I am here in DC. I cannot wait to explore all topics related to leadership and organizational culture with you. But let's start with your journey. You were a baseball student athlete at Jackson State. When did you know that working in athletics and college sports was something that you could do for a job? Tell me about your time as a student athlete.
Well, ironically, this journey started well before I got to college. So mom and dad were Mississippi State, and dad still is, Mississippi State season ticket holders since 1980. So I grew up every weekend on a college campus. And so I didn't know exactly the nuances of what the athletic director did, but I thought it was pretty cool to see a guy down on the sideline in a suit and get to go to every game. And so as a kid, I thought it was the coolest job ever and I always wanted to pursue it.
When did baseball come into the picture for you personally?
I started playing baseball yay high. I was 5 years old, started playing, the normal trajectory, T-ball, the buddy ball, travel ball, and was very, very fortunate to have some good mentors along the way and some, some good instructors, great coaches. And I actually was gravitated more to the game because of the people that I played for. And that made me want to pursue it at a high level because of the coaches that I was fortunate to be around.
I do have a side question. When you were a little kiddo playing baseball, T-ball, how did you stay focused? How did you not get distracted by, the butterflies in the fields? I mean, baseball can be a little bit of a long game to get through, even on the exciting days.
I'm a very competitive guy. I've always been that way. So I used to talk a little smack, and it's a little different than, the other ones, like other sports that I played basketball and I played football growing up. But baseball, I used to be the kid yelling from the outfield and yelling from no matter where position I was at and talking a little smack to the other team and having fun with it.
That's great. Okay, that's the secret to longevity in the
Yeah.
sport when you start so young. Well, tell me about when you did start making that move into working in administration. You were a grad assistant before you spent a year as an SID and then an assistant baseball coach at Hines Community College. Talk to me about that transition from student athlete to administrator.
So, I was always inquisitive of what it looked like to work as in athletic administration. And so, it's no secret when you first get out and you chase these GA positions, you don't make any money. And so I had some wise people tell me, if you're not going to make any money, at least have some fun with it. And growing up, Mississippi State was a dream school for me because I grew up on the campus. And so I pursued a graduate assistant position there. But there was still something in the back of my mind that was, hey, do I want to be an administrator? Do I want to be a coach? And I was, when I was trying to, make some ends meet as a grad assistant, I was doing some baseball lessons and I had some of my players have some success and thought I could be a good coach. And so once I finished my master's degree at Mississippi State, I pursued opportunity as a coach to dip my toe in the water on that side.
Well, you were successful. You're that team that year went to the JUCO World Series, caught fire in the postseason. Talk to me about some of those leadership lessons you took from that coach's hat that you had on that now you use today as a top administrator.
That job, and I've said this multiple times in these settings, is, when I retire 100 years from now, that will be the job that I'll always talk about. It was because of the lessons I learned with student athletes, being able to be transparent, learning how to cast a vision, learning how to tell a story. Because when you go on the road and you got to recruit and you're trying to captivate mothers and fathers to be able to convince them to let their son come play for you. Those are some of the things that I still carry with me today, and it's made me, really successful on this side.
Tell me how you use that same method of, talking to parents to get their kid to come and play for you as an athlete when you're the coach. How do you use that when you're hiring, whether that's hiring a coach or hiring, someone for your staff?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm a big believer of hiring people over resume. Even though the resume is important, I believe in hiring people. And I think, the year I spent as a coach and I went and recruited, I was recruiting the person. I didn't, it was no secret. I'm not going to go have the in-home visit or continue to go to their high school games, their travel ball games to watch them play if I didn't think they were good people. And so I think that kind of started there and has resonated to this day.
Another follow up there. I'm very curious. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't using AI. I know a lot of companies are starting to, go through the resumes with AI, look for those keywords, and then kind of weed out people that way. Could we risk missing something if we really want that people connection if we just kind of quickly, let AI go through the resumes and not look through them, not get that personal touch ourselves?
Yes, I do. I authentically think that way. Um, I'm a person that likes to have conversations and dialogue. Um, very, very intentional about my words and my actions, and I believe that the people that I want to surround myself with, I want them to kind of be the same way. And so when it comes to the hiring process, sometimes when you're hiring a coach, you may use AI a little bit to quickly find some stats. But when we get into the actual nitty gritty of, hey, why do I want you to be a part of our institution, and why do I want you to be a part of our team? Um, it's the authenticity of one-on-one dialogue.
How has that experience of you being an assistant coach impacted how you connect with your coaches as a sport administrator?
Knowing what they need and what they look for. I think also playing the role of the assistant coach, you learn the value of playing a role. Because usually head coaches delegate and assign particular task, and so that has helped me identify when I'm being around our multiple programs here at University of Houston, of the structure of the program and ensuring that people are playing the role that the head coach has designed the program to follow. That's helped me a lot.
Last question here. I'm just curious. You were an assistant coach at a community college, probably a few years ago, not too long ago, but a few years ago, probably before NIL was in place.
Yeah.
How different does it feel today for these coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, to navigate this new era differently than when you were a coach?
You know, it's very different, but I think the sport of baseball has tried to navigate it a little differently because they've always had this nuance. Usually the portal, you have the transfer portal that is evolved over time, but the sport of baseball has had to recruit against the draft for forever, right? So you recruit a kid, and it's no matter how good the kid is or how big your budget is, when you are a university, you're competing against the New York Yankees or the Atlanta Braves on a signing bonus, right? And so that has been in place for the sport of baseball for a while. Um, and so that I think that I've seen and talked to multiple coaches in the sport, and I think baseball has adapted to this new era from that perspective a lot quicker than other sports.
From your conversations with student athletes, specifically baseball student athletes, we'll stick here for a moment. Are they more intrigued about staying longer and evolving more as the collegiate player now that they have those NIL and potentially rev share opportunities? Or is it still kind of that draw to go and play professionally as early as you can?
I think one factor that we need to layer into this question is the experience. I think the kids that are having a great experience, the ones that are playing at places with elite fan bases, and I think you factor in the way they travel, the way they eat, the way they train. If a kid and their family in their camp feels like, the student athlete is getting everything and more at the institution, they're probably more willing to stay that extra year, um, to help the program continue to reach new heights. But if not, you see more times than not that kid would most likely pursue professional opportunity.
You mentioned the transfer portal, and as we all are navigating, kids can transfer multiple times. And not only does that risk impacting their academic career and how early and how quickly they can, actually complete a degree if they're, transitioning from different conferences and different institutions, but how are you at Houston really working to embrace and help those transfer students get acclimated quickly, especially if it's maybe not their first transfer experience?
We wrap our arms around my student athletes here. The whole student athlete development concept. I know it was life skills when I first got into the business, and it evolved to student athlete development. Um, we use that unit more times than not during the transition process. Usually it's, when people talk about student athlete development, they talk about life after sport initiatives. But we look at it as more of a holistic approach in ensuring that the transition from high school to college, and also from transfer to new university, and also from current here to the transition to professional life, all coincides with one another, and those student athletes get the attention they need from housing adjustments to making sure that there's a connection with the academic counselors to ensure that we have everything in place for a student athlete to be successful in the classroom, and then also working with all the particular needs that a student athlete may have, or the interests that they may be looking for off the field, to ensure that they have a great experience here.
I want to shift gears and talk about creating an environment for success as a leader, as senior level executive. You mentioned on another podcast this concept of the 8 to 5, of August to May, when you think about championship success across all sports. How do you carry the momentum of things, of the sports like basketball, football, baseball, to all across Cougar athletics, in terms of things like culture, quality of coaches, resources available, fan engagement, just resources across the board?
Well, ironically, the 8 to 5 concept started. Um, so we have been in the kind of the growth stage here of our department, especially on the revenue side. We made the jump in July of 23 to the Big 12, and we've been trying over the course of the last couple of years of finding creative ways to capture audience and keep people's attention. And so we started. Houston is one of the meccas in this country when it comes to the business community, and so that we looked at that as a great opportunity. So 8 to 5, August to May. When people hear 8 to 5, they also think about the normal working day. So we started a group of professionals, people that either own a business or that they're a decision maker at a business. Um, and we formed a group called 8 to 5 Club, and we identify these individuals of people that will help our athletic department be good from 8 to 5, which is August to May. That represents our playing season. And so these individuals are, we pick their brains about the fan experience, about the donor cycle. We talk to them about corporate sponsorships, NIL opportunities, and this group has really been essential for us for referrals and getting us in front of the right people here in the business community. Our athletic director Eddie Nunez is really big on something called a standard of excellence, and so we are chasing that across the board. There's no secret what Coach Sampson has done with putting men's basketball on the map, and ensuring that our men's basketball program has stayed in the national spotlight over the last decade. He's done an amazing job, and that's trickled down, to other sports. Our swimming and diving program has made the transition to this league, and skipped a beat from the success that they were having in American. Carl Lewis in our track program, Willie Fritz, what he's done, coming in and hitting the ground running, and just had a 10-win season and a great recruiting class. And we're excited for what his squad is going to do in 2026. The real question becomes, how do you leverage hustle to create urgency? That is the question that right now we are trying to answer as a department. Is how do we show our fan base and our constituents that we're willing to do whatever it takes to make them proud of the logo and make them want to be a part of this journey with us?
You mentioned in that 8 to 5 club, they're giving you feedback on things like the
Mhm.
fan experience. What has there been anything that surprised you about the feedback they've shared?
Um, you know, the thing that has probably surprised me the most um, is they want a true college sports environment. I'm newer here and have been mostly in college towns, and you have that aura and that atmosphere, the pageantry. When people talk about college athletics, they talk about the pageantry. When I first arrived here, um, you know, people talked about how this was different. Alvin, this is a pro market. This is a pro market. You can't think about this as what you saw at Mississippi State or Purdue. It's a pro market, and we really were operating that way in the first couple of years. And as we talked more and more to our fans, they want a true collegiate athletic experience. They want an elite tailgate experience. They want, at basketball, they want the Krzyzewskiville concept for our students. Um, they want to see crawfish at baseball games. And so we're leaning into it. We're leaning into it, and we're excited for what's to come.
You mentioned Eddie Nunez, recently hired as AD. You have been at Houston longer than Eddie has. Talk to me about the changes he's implemented and the way his leadership style has, slightly transformed the department.
Um, I think Eddie's relentless effort of of doing what it takes to get the job done has really resonated. I think he is a man of action. Um, you get around, I've been around some great leaders. I think I can attribute, my journey and success to the people I've worked for and worked with. I've hit the lottery with that from that standpoint. Every athletic director that I've worked with has changed. I can say it's been a life-changing experience for me in a positive way. I can shout every last one of them out. From the ones that patted me on the back and the ones that patted me on the butt and told me, "Hey, get yourself in line a little bit." So I've been very, very fortunate. But Eddie has come in and given a new energy around. Hey, guys, we're not happy with just being in the Big 12. This is what we can accomplish here. This is how it's got to be done, and I'm going to raise my hand and lead from the front. And however I can help each and every one of you, I'm going to do it. And it is what I've seen people that probably were a little reserved open up a little more and share more ideas and try new things. And we've become more innovative in our approach. And I think, across the street, the academic side of campus have seen that as well, and understands, hey, athletics is not playing around. They have some lofty goals, and I think they're going to hit them. And so I think that's the mindset that we're trying to create across the board.
Rising tide lifts all boats.
Mhm.
You mentioned innovation. You are the chief revenue officer, and that term is maybe a little bit new in college athletics as we've kind of shifted into this a little more professionalized model in this new era. What mindset shifts have you and your team had to make in this new rev share NIL era when it comes to external relations, ticket operations, things like that? We can't just keep the status quo in this day and age. How
Mhm.
have you and your team shifted?
Well, first I'll start off by saying this. I'm newer to this role, been in this role about 8 months. And, when people hear the term revenue, they immediately go to the numbers, right? Um, two coaches here. I spent a lot of time talking with Coach Sampson and talking with Coach Fritz. And when Eddie made the decision to promote me into this position, those were two of the first people I talked to about what do they see and how the numbers that we needed to get to, how, what do they see, as far as roadblocks or hurdles or even low hanging fruit. And when I went to see Coach Sampson first, there was something on his board that said, hey, before we can start talking about winning, we got to get rid of losing. And then the next breath, I talked to Coach Fritz, and he has a shirt on when we're talking to say, Cougs don't beat the Cougs. And so I'll be honest, in the first year of this, we have actually not focused on the quantitative goals. We've laid out our qualitative goals and tried to really, really make sure that we focus on our processes and procedures. And honestly, it's led to record-breaking year in ticket sales, a record-breaking year in fundraising. We're record-breaking year in corporate sponsorships. We had a record-breaking year in concession revenue. And so it's actually led to the things that we wanted to accomplish without making that the focus. We focused on the processes first. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but we started there. And then the next thing is we had to change the mindset of our approach, right? We were really overbearing with the amount of emails we were sending and the snail mail. We've kind of gotten rid of a lot of that stuff. We still do a little bit of it, but we've turned more into more listeners to people and having and doing more listening and talking. This era is different. This is not an era where you can just go simply ask people for money. That's not what people want anymore. It is, our approach is, hey, all of our needs and priorities are on this hand. Your interest as a constituent is on this hand. Let's figure out how to take your interests, our needs, and bring it together. And so that's been our new approach here at the University of Houston.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because one thing that you've personally been praised for is your ability to work and grow sport specific and annual giving efforts. Those are two things that feel like kind of a grind to go out and to work on that annual fund, to raise funds for things like resurfacing a track, improving a volleyball gym. Those are kind of maybe less sexy things to fundraise for. I say that as a former track athlete. I mean, so important to have that new track surface, but not always the most fun thing to ask for support for. How do you translate that kind of steady grind that you are very good at to today's kind of fast-paced environment and to your role as the CRO?
Staff development. I think that, I'm a little biased. I talked about the leaders that I've worked for along the way. They've given me opportunities. I had opportunities to sit at the table even when I probably didn't deserve to, or, probably shouldn't have been in certain rooms. They gave me an opportunity to do it. And so I believe holistically on developing the staff members that I'm responsible for and giving them ownership of something. I want them to have ownership of projects, of initiatives. And so, we don't look at this as, hey, tennis is a non-revenue sport, so it falls down below football on the totem pole from an attention to detail standpoint. We the standard of excellence that I spoke to earlier, we want to have a standard of excellence across the board. And so giving especially our younger staff members, ownership of working with those sports and having the same templates that we implement for football or men's basketball to make sure that we can still hit those numbers and make sure we prioritize the needs of those programs the same way.
Because that's the perfect transition to this last part, evaluating success. What metrics do you use to evaluate yourself in terms of success? What does success look like for you? And are those the same metrics you use when you're evaluating your team?
So, that's as my career's evolved, I would say if you asked me a question 5 years ago, the first thing I'm gonna say is I'm gonna spit out how many visits I did and how many ads did I make and how many gifts did I close and how much money did I raise. Uh, now I look at that and answer this. I believe holistically in the growth of my staff, and when I see that it's clicking for them and they're able to take something from A to Z, I measure it as we're growing, and success is something that we are really really accomplishing. Also, from a sports standpoint, on the field, on the court perspective, um, we want to win a championship in everything, right? We want to win a championship, but you start to look at, hey, where were we on game one? Where were we on game 8? Where were we at the end of the season? Did we get better along the way? Did our kids mature? Um, did we start to did we, when adversity hit, did we quit? Did we fight? Did we make adjustments when a team goes on a run? Did we make adjustments to combat their run? That's how we measure, how I personally measure success.
You talked about delegating and empowering, your team to own something within this realm of external operations. You were the assistant coach. You were the one who probably had to go and do a lot of the maybe busy work. How has that transitioned to senior leader, having to delegate? How has that gone for you?
First of all, Steph, you said the grunt work. In JUCO baseball, you cut the grass, you get a lot, you get some laundry. Uh, that's why that'll be the job I'll talk about 100 years from now. But yeah, I think that experience um, taught me a lot about role playing. I go back to it. You figure out where you fit, right? I'm a Laker fan. And people have joked with me about being from Mississippi and how in the world do you become a Laker fan? But I was and still am to this day. So growing up, I was infatuated with the role that Derek Fisher played on the Lakers, and it was steady Eddie. He was never an NBA All Star. And you look at, hey, Kobe called for the people, like Kobe ran the organization. Kobe called for trades for certain people and wanted some people off the team, but he never wanted to get rid of Derek Fisher. Why? He's not an NBA point guard. I mean, he's not a NBA All Star, but he was a facilitator. He was a leader. He took clutch shots, and the same rings that Kobe got, Derek Fisher got. And so that resonated with me. That mindset, still resonates today. Um, and so I will always be grateful for my time as an assistant coach. And I still kind of carry the same mentality now, even with our current setup here at Houston and everywhere else I've been, is, what can I take on to help our team be successful?
In terms of that, what habits have you had to cultivate, or what habits have you maybe had to give up as you've evolved through your career? Going from that doing the laundry JUCO assistant coach to now being the CRO. What have you changed in terms of your daily routine, rituals, things like that?
Honestly, I really haven't changed a lot. You know, I pride myself on trying to be the first one to the office every day, getting my day started, leading by example, having a plan for the day, having a plan for the week. Those are things that have been rooted in my routine for a long time. Really taking the time out to call people. Is just that, like in recruiting, you hit the phones all day long, right? And so, trying to make sure I touch donors, um, sponsors, people that single game ticket buyers, and me just picking up the phone randomly, maybe one or two a week, and just asking them, hey, what would get you over the edge to become a season ticket holder? and just hearing that and making sure I implement that in our agendas when we talk as a staff. I'm a big handwritten note guy. Um, so those are things that have been a part of my routine for a long time, and have continued to be a part of it today.
I want to dive a little bit more into that because I know people listening are going to be curious. Do you have a set day? Is it Sunday evening where you're kind of mapping out your week ahead? Do you write it in the calendar? Do you use your phone? What does that actually look like when it comes to truly planning it all out?
So Sundays are a big day for me. That's the day of the week for me. Um, Typically I'm a person that, I don't want to come across as like, hey, the workaholic. But I work hard. That's something I pride myself in. But really, Saturdays and Sundays. So Sundays is the most important day of the week for me. But typically stagger, and I got this actually from John Cohen, AD at Auburn. Typically, if I'm typically at the office on Saturday mornings, and I usually come in really early, and I'm kind of be out by 11. Um, and so I can still have a Saturday, still have, and then I typically stagger that with evening work on Sundays. So now, from a perception standpoint, I still have my Saturday and I still have my Sunday. And my Saturday is reserved for making sure, hey, what are some loose ends I need to tie up from the week? Instead of trying to rush and get those things. If I can't get to it on Thursday and Friday, it's okay. I'll reserve that. If it's more some busy work, replying to a couple emails, I'll reserve it for Saturday morning. Sunday is about making sure I have everything written down, and I kind of have it in sections. I have follow-ups, and that's more from a revenue generation standpoint of what proposals need to be probably altered or adjusted or even sent out. Okay. And then I have of course, my sport administration duties. What are things that need to get done with our sports, or things I need to observe over the course of the next week with our sports? Meeting agendas. So any of meetings that I'm set to lead the upcoming week, I try to have the agendas ready on Sunday. And that way, I can either send them out to the people I'm been meeting with, or I spent a lot of time. Dave Williams, our senior deputy AD, and Eddie, I pick their brains a lot. And so if I have this stuff already done, I could run. Hey, I'm meeting with the group on Wednesday. It's Monday morning. Hey, what do you think? These are a couple of things I want to go over with that group. Do you think I'm missing something? And if I didn't have it ready on Sunday, then I wouldn't be prepared for the Wednesday meeting, for example.
You also mentioned that you are on the phone a lot, and I know a lot of that is with, your constituents, but how often are you trying to tap into, your own growth and development? How often are you calling your mentors or your peers or your family?
Um, Quite a bit. Family is the biggest critics. So they keep it real. We're from Mississippi. They keep it real. So me and my dad are very particular, very, very close. And so I me and him, and he's a big sports fanatic and sees it from a different lens, different perspective. I have to watch him, because he's one of those, he watches Feinbaum every day. So I have to I have to tread lightly with him. But friends, checking in on them, they're in different endeavors. So it's really, I learn a lot from hearing what they're tackling in their careers, and try to figure out, hey, number one, being a genuine friend, but also picking apart some of the things that they're talking about to maybe implement here, in my day to day. And then from an industry peer standpoint, um, I have a Rolodex of people that, I want to talk to some people daily. I have some colleagues I talk to every day. And then I have some colleagues that once a week, and then some once a month. But there are some when I call, it is uh entertaining is the right word I'll use. So um
We need to release those group texts and see what the senior administrators are talking about these days. Well, last question for you here, Alvin. We're talking about evaluating success. Talk to me about evaluating opportunities. You are, executive senior associate AD. You've been in the industry for a while. You still are young. I'm sure there will be one day when an AD role tempts you. How will you know that you're ready?
That's a really good question. Really, really good question. Um, from talking with a lot of mentors of mine, um, that have made that transition that you're speaking about, and they get in the chair and they'll say they're still, no matter how much they prepped and thought they were ready, there are still a lot of roadblocks and hurdles that they didn't expect they would have when they got to that that moment of their career. And so it's not about, for me, trying to be perfect. It's about making sure I'm rooted in my values. I understand fully who I am and how I want to lead. Um, making sure that, I'm big on mentorship. So making sure that I can be mentored at the same time. There's a president in place that will be pouring into me, not just as the athletic director, but a person. And so, those are the things I'll assess when that time comes. But right now it's all about the Cougs. So and so it's all about the Cougs right now.
Absolutely. No pressure. But we, again, from a learning perspective, it's super curious to know how senior leaders think about that potential next step if that time comes. Well, Alvin Franklin, Executive Senior Associate AD and Chief Revenue Officer at Houston, thank you so much for joining us here on the One Question Leadership podcast and sharing all of this tremendous insight into what it means to be a team player. We'll see you out there doing laundry and closing deals for the Cougs. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Steph. Have a good one.
This episode of the One Question Leadership podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.